Nope. Looks like I just went live. I did not actually mean to click that button, but that's okay. That's okay. We're live. We're live. We're rocking. We're moving forward. So, I will put here in the messages or in the chat, Max, I got your link message. And that is because Max sent me a comment about camera motion, camera work, and the link shows up in my notifications, but it doesn't show up on the video. This would be, I think, from yesterday's live stream. So because of that, I got Max's message, but I couldn't respond to it actually. So one of those crazy little things. Today is going to be a fun day. I'm getting increasingly enthused about this new opening shot or opening scene in the show, because it accomplishes so many cool things that I think are really going to help get the program off on the right foot. Establishing the main character right away, establishing sort of a little bit of wry humor that is sort of the awkward moment variety, which kind of appears here and there in the show, and some of the sort of anime-derived idioms that will work its way into the animation as well. So, if you're wondering what the heck I'm talking about, let me go to my full screen and see. In my now, of course, legendary spiral notebook, I actually worked out the stuff that I'm going to be working on animating today. It's already underway. Things are going well, and I'm having more fun than a guy should be allowed to have. So anyway, in regard to if Max comes around, which I don't think he is around right now, but I'll put this in the chat as well. Definitely good camera work. So it was basically a fight scene. It was a Jackie Chan fight scene that really was quite good camera work, where the camera was really doing a good job of moving with the actors through an extremely busy bit of action, fighting. So, all right, let's see what we have going on here. So I've done actually 2 shots this morning. Yesterday I did. Oh, and I also added this establishing shot. So this is actually another cool thing about this opening scene, is that it actually bookends the episode really nicely, because this episode ends in the same place and literally with the same shot, except it's pulling out at the end. Hey Gemini, hey Tiny Salad. So, like I said, that's not a big deal, but it's kind of elegant. It bookends the episode, as we say. So, true confession time, despite the fact that I've been doing most of my animation at 8 frames per second, I'm finding myself drift into the 12 frames per second mode just a bit today. Just because it feels good. So what happens here is we've got I've been wondering about something. Just kind of wondered.
I knew this day would come.
Okay, so I really like the way that feels. So it's like this really big, heavy moment where Asher completely misreads what's going on here. And so, anyway, that gets us going. That's what we're working on. So let's go back over here to Tahoma. And I will tell you guys that I made a discovery I made a discovery today, like literally this morning, about drawing an animation that may be the single most important thing I've learned and could share with you guys. And I don't know I'm gonna share it today. I think what I might do is wait and post a video that's just about it. Although that top secret thing, we will probably be bumping into today in the course of creating some shots. So when it comes up, we'll get to it. I'll give you a hint. The hint has to do with what I call flow lines. Flow lines. And so, is anyone here? Hey, Darren. Hello, friends. Is anyone here trying to improve their own drawing? Is that anybody? Because if you're trying to improve your own drawing, I'm gonna share with you something I've discovered that. See, now that I've let the cat out of the bag, I have to share this, I guess. So I'll try to do it concisely. The concept, though, is what I call flow lines. And it will come up in today's animation probably in more ways than one, but let me just zip through here and make sure I'm satisfied with how this is flowing. I'm also kind of following Amar's advice to a degree, in the sense that I am leaving this stuff in pencil test mode because I'm just having fun, I'm moving fast, and I'm liking the way things look. And frankly, what I'm not doing is baking a bunch of shots into a single Tahoma scene. I'm still leaving them broke up. Each individual shot is in its own Tahoma scene, but I'm gonna keep moving forward here in pencil test mode, because this is something when I did the pencil test animation of the thing for full chain animation a couple weeks ago, what I'm doing now is kind of a lot of what I did there, where I'm basically moving, I'm toggling through these frames so quickly that I actually can feel the animation continuity as I go, and I'm just literally scribbling over it as it's toggling through the frames, and that can be a pretty effective way to get that smooth continuity of movement that you want. But I suppose the fair question would be, what's the secret? Do I recommend Opentoonz or Blender? Well, of course he means Blender, for those who don't know. But Gemini, I would say it really depends on. Oh boy, it depends on what your goal is. Opentoonz is going to have a shorter learning curve. That's probably a gimme. Blender, if your interest in Blender surrounds the grease pencil and doing 2D animation with the grease pencil, then I would say it's probably 6 of one, half dozen of the other. If you master either one, you're going to be able to pretty much do anything you want to do. In the long run, of course, Blender's got more capabilities because of the whole 3D aspect. And then when it comes to the sort of the streamlined process of just like ink and paint, and what we think of as a two-dimensional cartoon, probably the workflow in Opentoonz is a little more mature. It's a little more straightforward and mature. Blender's coming on fast, though. I mean, I don't know what they're up to now. It might be 2.94. I think I've got 2.93 on my machine. So, but I mean, I've been using Blender for 20 years, so probably longer than some of you guys have been alive. And I'm definitely a Blender fan, but it's not the best choice for what I'm doing here. So obviously, the choice I've made would suggest that I think Opentoonz or Tahoma is the better way to go for something like what I'm doing. So anyway, you guys might want to know what that big secret is. So let me just kind of knock out a little bit of these tightening up his animation here, tightening up sort of the progression, and then I'll go ahead and show you what I was talking about. So I think it's a extremely here's the thing. Okay, so you guys are trying to draw, right? You're trying to animate, but you're also trying to draw. And you guys will agree with me that being able to draw well obviously helps a lot in being able to animate. Because, and the one big reason is because you are often going to bump into problems of maintaining your characterization from drawing to drawing. You know, I've done it a million times where you start to lose the character as you go along. So I sort of stumbled on actually a way to mitigate a lot of those sorts of problems. And so I'll save this and I'll go ahead and divert now to showing you what I'm talking about. And you guys can do with it what you will. But basically, okay, good drawing essentially is seeing and measuring, and it's taking what you see either in your imagination or if you have a reference, a photo, drawing from life, you're trying to recreate what you see on the paper or on the computer. So we have a measuring problem. Well, it turns out that we suck at measuring. What we don't suck at is following lines of continuity, okay? Meaning, I'm going to put a red line here and switch that to my charcoal. Okay, so in other words, if you look at this drawing and you begin to find the lines of continuity where I say if I follow this contour around here, it sort of tells me where the cheekbone goes. Or if I follow this contour here, it kind of gives me an arc of his eyes, you know, and this shape. So I wind up with these, if we solo this level, you can see that what we wind up with is these contours that lead our eye around the drawing. So like here's a good example of it. If you follow his jawline up, it loops naturally into the ear. Okay? So what this does is it creates a situation where I don't really have to guess, because this is basically what you're going to do most of the time, is you're going to guess, like how far is it from here to here? From his mouth, let's say, to his ear. And you're going to kind of put things in there, and you're going to wind up losing two things. You're going to lose the three-dimensional volume of it because you're not seeing the curves and these well, if you were working in 3D, you'd call them edge loops actually, right? But it's easy not to see those when you're trying to measure. But what you'll find is that if you just figure out what some of these contours are, like, you know, he's got this wrinkle here, well, that flows up naturally into his nose and kind of gives me the whole dimensionality of the tip of his nose, if you will, right? And then I could say, I'm not going to put it in the drawing, but you could say that the ridge of the nose flows right up and around the eye as well. Kind of gives me a hint on where the eye is, right? And so what happens is, by working with these flow lines, I'm able to figure out the structure of the thing I'm trying to draw. What really made me think about it a lot was that when I drew, I guess I'm going to have to try to recreate these here, but I was drawing Asher. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete this because I don't need it in the scene, and I'm going to create a new scene to just I'm going to discard the changes because I already saved it before. Hold on a second. I better be careful here. Let's clean up our act, and then we'll go to the next chapter, as it were. So I'm going to go to my scene cast, remove all unused levels, and save my work. Okay. So that's going to take a little bit of time. Tahoma usually isn't like super fast at saving things. And then I'll show you what I'm talking about by basically reproducing what I did on paper. Okay, so here we go. Let's go here. I'm going to create a new scene. And what I did was I drew a picture of Asher. Okay, so let me just do a standard pencil kind of thing. Okay, so let's create a level. And I know Asher has basically a round, he's got this round skull, and then he's sort of got this cheekbone that sticks out. Okay, and I'm just referring back to what I did on paper. So this will make sense once I get it kind of blocked in here a little bit. So I'm not talking about these flow lines at this moment from the vantage point of drawing. Okay, so I'm cheating a little bit because I happen to know how to draw Asher. Okay, that's okay. Let's ignore that little cheat, because what I'm talking about here is going to be flow lines as it relates to animation. Okay, so I kind of have these little bit of a guide through my character, like so. Okay, and then for Asher, we can kind of see his eyelids, we can kind of see the bags under his eyes. He's got a very crooked nose, about like that. And this is a pretty good copy of the drawing that I did on paper. Now, what I found interesting about this was that I drew the next pose, and instead of going forward in time, hey Ashnan, instead of going forward in time, I drew the drawing beside it. I just did it. I'm on paper, so let's keep it on one. Let's just keep it on one sheet. So I'm like, I know I'm going to need several expressions here, so I went like this. This is what actually happened, and I drew. So I'm like, okay, let's make sure these are all the same size. And then I think where it started was I realized, okay, I'm going to have his eye line. It's like here his eye line's kind of pointing down, sort of this downtrodden sort of look. And I knew his head was going to rise up and come around. And that's one of the hardest things to animate, is a 3D turn. Okay? So I thought, well, okay, we're going to kind of raise it up so we're kind of looking up, and so the curvature through the eyes will kind of go like this. Okay? And then he's going to sort of flatten out. So this is actually a little bit wrong, because the next one I drew was pretty much straight across. And then where we're going to wind up is he's actually almost a reversal of this shot. Not quite, because he's a little higher. His head is a little more elevated. And so it would be more like maybe something like that. Okay. So when I drew this, I thought, well, wait a second. Here I know there's parts of this character that are rigid, okay? Like the distance from the top of his skull to the end of his beard. You could argue that there could be some squash and stretch, but for our purposes, we're gonna say if his head's raising up, then his chin would come up a little bit, and it's not gonna change shape. It's gonna be consistent in its shape. Okay, over here, it would probably be coming back down around to where it was here, and then it might dip a little bit here. Okay. Well, what occurred to me is that if I had another brush here, and I literally did it on paper with the red pencils, I said, wait a second. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. I'm going to spread these guys out. Because what if I draw the actual flow line through the character, so that I'm following the flow spatially, which in effect is also giving me the flow through time? Well, okay, where's the bottom of his nose? Well, it's kind of going to be about here, it's going to be about here, it's going to be about here. Okay, let's just keep following that through. Well, what about his chin? Okay, his chin goes like this, and his mouth is kind of splitting it right here. Right? So now you've got these curves that actually show you the spatial flow from one drawing to another. Okay? Now there are details you got to get right, like the little divot in his chin, but actually you could create a flow line for that if you wanted to as well. So we see that the flow line for the I said chin, I meant cheek. So you see these bumps in his cheek. If they're in between these two lines, then they're going to stay in between these two lines. Now this is where it gets really powerful. It isn't about the measurement. It's not about the distance between the things. It's especially when you're animating and it's changing over time. It's not about that. What it's about is the relationship between these contours. they're allowed to change over time. This is actually the essence of why you can get away with murder when you're doing caricature. If the relationships, so let's say he's got wrinkles in his eyebrows, so or in his forehead, you know, little age wrinkles. So we'll say let's get those in there too. So when I followed this process through, I found to a degree that's really surprising that I was able to maintain the characterization more easily by far than I've ever done before. It was stupidly easy, where it's like, oh my gosh, this really, because it looks like Asher, you know. So now I've really reduced my burden in terms of what I've got to get right. I know there's going to be a little cheek bump here. It's going to be a little more extreme. Let's see here. I want to make sure I get this right. Oh, I actually did it. I did it right. I did do it right. Okay. Okay, so this was kind of the process I was going through. So his nose, we're kind of looking up his nose right there. Okay, so I do know what the basic shape of his nose is. So in that sense, I have a bit of an advantage. Okay, mouth, mouth, mouth. Okay, and then probably for his, we probably want to look at the tops of his eyes as well. Tops of his eyes. Tops of his eyes. Now you think about this. You not only got a good way here to maintain your continuity with your characterization, but it also just told you exactly where the tweens are. Because if you wanted to draw a tween that goes between these two, these lines tell you where everything's supposed to be, right? So you could actually tween this if you're going for that Disney thing. You could go like this. You might find you have to spread your drawings out, and it will get messy if you're dealing with an entire body, like a figure. So, and in this case, where we might want to add an additional guide would be for the center line, because we're essentially animating this progression around this curve, right? Like that. So, hey, Amar. Okay, so these flow lines are solving the spatial problem. They're solving the measurement problem. I don't have to measure. Why? Because all I actually have to do is follow contours around and see what I bump into. If I follow this around, so you could cut and paste a photograph into your drawing program, whatever it is, and begin to follow these contours around a photo or a character's face or whatever, and you'll discover, if you just let your pencil or whatever you're using, just see what it bumps into, see where these contours take you. What happens is you eliminate the problem of having to measure, because you're going to guess and you're going to be wrong a lot of the time. And the interesting thing about that is it's extremely forgiving. It's the same reason caricature works, because when you follow these contours, what happens is the relationships between them tends to wind up being correct, even though the actual distances might be off a little bit. And I surmise that this is actually the reason why frame by frame animation, most people kind of feel like it looks and feels a little better than animation that's computer assisted in 2D animation. Now, if you're totally embracing that style, that's a different thing. But let's just say we're going for the anime thing, okay? So generally, well, why would it be that it looks better if the frames are hand-drawn? Well, I think it's because whether you intend to or not, you're going to inadvertently introduce a little bit of that variation in the relationships, but as long as the relationships between these shapes remains correct, it's still going to look like the character, and it's still going to feel like the character. And if they're in motion, obviously you can do a lot with you know, squash and stretch, and it's still going to look fine. Okay, so in this case, I also have this. We've got his wrinkle, here we would have a wrinkle here. And again, this guide, this flow line that flows through the shapes, it's what I always say about working from the known to the unknown. It tells me right where his mouth is supposed to be. I can see it. Boom, boom, boom. So when I was playing with this, not only was I really surprised how easy it was to stay on character, but I asked myself then, well, okay, is this going to translate to drawing as well as it translates to animation? And I would say that I think it does. I think it does. There are entire schools. I can't remember who the guy was who started it back in the, I think, 30s or something. But there are entire schools of figure drawing that really are built on this principle of these contour lines that flow through the figure and wind up, in my case, when I tested it, I drew this, which is one of the best knockoffs of John Buscema that I've ever done. Okay. And then I took this, which I think is a Mike Magnolia drawing, not sure, but I just made a quick copy, right? Because I was curious, okay, does this translate into drawing in the same way that it does animation? And I think it does. So what I did was I just basically started with one contour, and I looked at where I bumped into, you know, what did it make me bump into when I followed the contour line around, and it was all of a sudden much easier to find the relationships that made the thing look like what it was supposed to look like. Right? So same thing here. Now, of course, if you wanted to actually turn something like this into an animation, what you would do, probably one way you could do it would be you just duplicate this, you know, 6 times, and then erase all except one of the figures. I guess there's 7 of them, but you know, you'd erase all but the one that you want for each frame, and then you just reposition them, right? And there you go. So you guys play with this on your own, and let me know if you let me know in the comments if you want what you think about if this helped your drawing, because I'm telling you, it really helped mine. I was kind of blown away. It was one of those days where it's like, man, this is so effective that I'm almost like, it's like 10 o'clock and I'm exhausted. Like I don't want to. I'm not calling them gesture lines. You can call them whatever you want. I'm calling them flow lines. That's what I see them as, because for me, they give me a flow within the figure, and they give me a flow between the figures. So in all matters that are important, it would appear to be quite an effective tool. So, and I certainly am not suggesting that I discovered this. Okay. Not at all. So I don't want to keep going on this exercise mainly because I just want to get to the actual work on the show. But yeah, let me know how what I want to do for you guys, especially if you struggle with drawing, what I want you to do is I want you to play around with this and see if it makes it so that all of a sudden, very, very instantly, you find your drawings turn out to be more accurate than they used to be. Because I strongly suspect they will. And I think this is why I'm kind of enamored of, in terms of cartooning, I mentioned the other day that I like Ben Caldwell. Well, I think the reason for that, I never thought about it before, but when Ben Caldwell designs characters with these very, like a lot of S and C shapes that kind of go like this, and they're very whippy, I call them whippy. Well, that style of cartooning lends itself really well to naturally finding flow lines. You know, if this guy's got a, you know, kind of a attitude like this, you might curve this around here, and I'm going to go ahead and erase this because I don't like what I did there, but you know, you just sort of find these contours that guide you through the character, right? So this kind of whips around and flows into, you know, whatever, and what you, all of a sudden you're finding that you're easily creating characters that have a lot of life to them and a lot of character, you know, a lot of that magical pop that we all wish we could get into our drawings, and that some of us seem to be able to do naturally and effortlessly, and others of us struggle with, right? You know, and the question you always ask is, well, is there actually a way? Is there a secret? Is the person who can do it, they're just doing something different than I'm doing, and they may not even be aware they're doing it. But what is it they're doing, you know, is the question. So I think this is part of it. So again, I call these flow lines. It would be pretty easy. Let's shrink this guy down a little bit. And again, I'm going to turn on this so that I can. And by the way, compared to working with onion skins, I find this. I suspect this is like way easier. So I'm going to say, let's just say this guy's going to get up into a pose like this. So here's the bottom of his eye line. Here's his nose, and there's his mouth, but his chin's gonna open way up. So he's gonna yell something, right? So he's turning his head and yelling at the same time. Okay. So top of his eye line. So the point is, I can draw the curve any way I want to. It doesn't matter as long as I follow it as a guide. It's the only thing that matters, right? This is the bottom of his nose. Here's his mouth that's open. Okay, we want to do a little measuring in the sense of making sure his basic dimensions remain pretty consistent, right? And you can do that with little circles or whatever, right? Like that. Just kind of, so we know his eye is going to come up here, and here we've got this flow line around the eye and into this wrinkle, if you will. So let's just kind of follow that, and now he's really shouting loudly and making a nuisance of himself. You get the idea? So like I said, play around with it and see if it works for you. Blah, 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 blah. You know, you do have to practice some things drawing, as far as, you know, you need to be able to draw a circle. You know, basic shapes, and a little bit of measuring is useful. So right here you could say, well, this might be exaggerated too much to where he almost seems like he's changing volume. So if he's moving quickly, you know, from this pose to another one, then basically you can get away with it because it becomes just a squash and stretch, you know, that makes it look more animated, right? So anyway, there you go. Back to work. So the next shot is going to be, let's jump back here to Vegas. Motion paths. Yeah, and I've seen in like if you read How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, John Buscema talks about the center line or the action line. Quite a few people talk about that. And I don't find that as useful, but it can be useful, especially on a full figure. So, okay, so we got this, and now we got to get back to dealing with Mel. Okay? So this is the stuff I animated this morning, and then big sigh out of Asher, and now we got to jump back to Mel, and Mel's got a little bit of acting to do. So let's go back here, and we'll go new scene. I'm not even going to save this. And I want this to be 0000G. File, save all. And this is going to be 0000G. And then we're going to tweak our render settings. Let me see. Boy, Amar's got a lot of comments here. Gesture lines and arcs really helpful when animating. I've used it before. It's basically like when you're doing figure drawing, especially when you're doing warm-ups. I think the significant takeaway for me is, number one, it eliminates having to measure. You basically don't have to measure nearly as much, because if you follow the flow lines, they just lead you. You just bump into things in the figure or the face or whatever it is you're drawing. And that shows you where things are. And again, because the relationships between those contour lines are really what matters, it can be off a little bit. And if the relationship breakdown is still accurate, then you'll still capture the you know, the image or the character that you were trying to capture. Haven't done them in ages. At a studio, I'd hire models to do those sessions. In most programs, they call lines like these motion paths, blah, 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 blah. Okay, back to work. So Mel says, oh yeah, we need to do our render settings. Output settings, and this is going to be JPEG. That's going to be plus scenes 0000G render. Okay? And I'm not going to render it now, but I will save my work. What the heck? Okay, so the last thing we saw Mel do, I'm going to put the edit in preview mode so I can. Okay, so Mel did this. So Asher says,
I knew this day would come.
Okay, so then what? This is going to take a bit of acting. Mel says, he says, well, I mean, come on, Asher. I mean, you know, sometimes a guy just gets, you know, hungry, and Asher jumps in.
Yes, Melchizedek. It's perfectly natural to want to know your story.
To which Mel says, story?
To learn where you came from.
To which Mel says, well, actually, I was just wondering if we had any popcorn. And then he breaks into his patented Mel grin, which is cool because, again, we're establishing right here in the first scene in the show a lot of the like idioms that are going to be flowing throughout the show here and there. So we're sort of just really establishing what the show is going to be about and what it's going to be like. So then Mel's like, so then actually what we're going to do, this is going to be cool. At this juncture, we're going to do the, let me see here. Let me find it in the breakdown on paper. We're going to do one of these things. I don't know if you guys can see it, but Asher's going to turn into this like doe-eyed thing that you see in anime sometimes when he realizes that he let the cat out of the bag and there was like no reason for him to do so. And so he's like, oh, jeez. Kind of moment. So, switch back to here. And so let's start by getting Melchizedek in there because he is, it's important that to note that in the last shot, okay, that's where he is in frame. So it's about, speaking of measuring, he's taking about 1/5 to 1/4 plopped in the middle. So, all right, we'll use that as a bit of a guide. So, because we kind of want to start in the same place where we left off, right? So there we go. So Mel's in there. And again, I'm giving myself the liberty of not necessarily staying locked to 8 frames per second. So what I want to do, because there's a lot of acting in this shot, what I want to do is get the flow of the movement. I'm not going to do the two-dimensional flow line thing like I just demonstrated because I pretty much know what I'm doing with my characterization, so I don't need to do it on one page. Plus I already drew I actually drew all the poses out on paper anyway. I find the more I do that, the better my results are across the board. So in the previous pose, essentially we were looking up at Mel. So let's just get his basic characterization blocked in. So I could reuse the one I had before, but you know what? I'm having so much fun drawing today that I don't want to. I'm just gonna go ahead and redo it and just see if it keeps getting better and better, like a great relationship, right? Okay, so Mel's neck is about like that. Okay, so he's a little nonplussed. He's a little surprised at, you know, Asher just let out this really labored sigh. Okay, so Mel feels a little bit bad. Okay, so I knew this day would come. Huh? Okay, so Mel's like, well, you know what? Maybe his attitude is like that. Um, so Amar says, how much more animation you need to complete to be ready to pitch the series? Well, I mean, is uh, episode 1 is done being animated other than the new scene I'm adding. Okay, so I don't know how far I am into it here, but I'm going to say I'm probably at least 25% of the way into it. Something like that. So it's not really a matter of pitching the series, to use your terminology, because once episode 1's ready to go, it's basically going to be me taking look at what I'm doing right now and saying, okay, now let's go through episode 1 and see what things we can tighten up or fix up. The good news is this, because episode 1 is running long, that means there's probably going to be a lot of opportunities to take shots in episode 1 that currently play at 8 frames per second and just let them play at 12. Just to cut the time down, and everything moves a little faster, everything's a little smoother, if you will. Not always, sometimes it backfires. But so I'm going to be able to reduce the time that way, which will, I am pretty sure, reduce the number of shots that I have to redo, because it eliminates some shots that would want to be redone because of they just need more tweens. Well, if they play half again faster, you tend to mitigate that problem to a degree. So, long-winded answer to your question, but I would say once we get the show down to time, then I'll reevaluate what shots need to be redone, and there will be some. And then I need to just lay in the voices and score the darn thing. And of course, Foley and sound effects, right? You know, the birds chirping in the background or whatever it is. So, right, my concept though, one of the key reasons I'm doing the scene that I'm working on right now, is because I really wanted to open the show with a bang. I wanted to open the show with Mel as opposed to a 2.5-minute backstory, and the simple solution was to just tell the backstory through Asher talking to Mel, and it gives us this sort of somewhat comedic, certainly amusing, awkward moment misunderstanding situation that gets us going on the right foot. You know, it gets us going in a bit of a comedic direction and sets the tone for the show. So that's a good thing. Having done that, by the way, I'm going to say I want this to come out just a little bit more. So right now I'm undecided, but one of two things will happen. Either I'm going to charge through and just finish episode 1 and then release it, and then any crowdfunding will be in the wake of actually getting episode 1 on the street. Or I will launch a crowdfund after releasing the first sequence of the show, which is going to be what you guys see here, the introduction, followed by this scene that I'm working on right now, and then the 2.5-minute backstory, which also has a little bit of a comedic button on the end of it, going back to Mel and Asher. So then you'll have this sequence that's probably about 3 to 4 minutes long that I will just, probably in any case, I'm just going to release it on YouTube. In other words, I'm gonna finish it. So you're going to have like the first 3-4 minutes of the show done, music, voices, the whole deal. Go ahead and release that, right here on YouTube, and try to generate a little buzz that way. I'm sure it'll get plenty of views, and maybe use that as a mechanism to launch a crowdfund. So I don't know about crowdfunding, whether it's going to be after a release of an initial episode here on YouTube, or whether it's going to be actually after episode 1 is just done and hits the street. I just haven't decided, and you know what? I'm not going to decide today. I got enough work to do to keep me busy, and as you guys know, one way or another, the show is going to get done, and it is going to hit the street, so that's not even a question or concern. Okay. Right. Okay, so now I've actually done probably way more work on Mel than I needed to here, but let's start to feel what's supposed to happen. Let me think about this for a minute. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give him another turn of the head, so I'm going to give him 3 frames here, and I'm going to go ahead and just... Okay, now, is this going to angle just a little bit? I think so. Just a little bit. Okay. Okay, so the idea would be conciliatory. You know, Mel sees this kind of overreaction from Asher, and his attitude is, well, geez, Asher. I mean, it's perfectly natural for a guy to kind of, you know, that's his attitude. I hope that conveys what I'm talking about when I sort of make these voices and act it out. So yeah, and there's quite a bit of dialogue here in this shot. So we want to make sure we've got the characterization spot on. Okay, so speaking of these flow lines, that might be a little dipping out a little further than it should. You need to think about the 3D volume of his massive hair. This just feels a little too thick to me, so I'm just going to take it out and redo it. Yeah, that's probably better. All right, back here. Okay, now he would probably shrug. So it seems to me that this is going to have to be tweened, because I kind of feel like we're blocking in a couple key poses here that are going to need some stuff in between them. Okay. Okay, so this would definitely be a blink situation. I gotta say, I'm giving myself a lot of latitude here on the acting, in the sense that, let's see, let's hit the D key. In the sense that if things feel like they'd be, you know, entertaining, I'm kind of running with it. So if we add an eye blink here, this is going to have to actually stretch out a little bit. Okay, yeah. So once, so if we're going to put in an eye blink, we just added a second to this sequence, you know, just like that. Boop. Okay. So then he launches into this sort of explanation kind of situation. Okay. So, which, by the way, let's just do a duplicate here and then erase it. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tween this. So we've got this extent here to there. So boop, something like that. Okay, this is a little bit off. This is not quite right. I'm going to push that in a little bit. Let's flip this. Yes, that's what I thought. This is pretty bad. This is actually pretty bad. Yep. I am going to erase most of this. Okay. Yep. Well, that's why we flip our canvas. Whoops. That's why we flip our canvas, folks. Something about the... I mean, there's there's stuff about this that's obviously problematic, and there's stuff that isn't quite as easy to ferret out. So, unfortunately, I really kind of feel like I want to start over with the eye. And this is kind of challenging. Drawing a character on character with the head tilted is kind of difficult, actually. But, well, it's my own fault, since I'm the one who decided to do it. And tell you what we're going to do. We're going to erase the whole thing. We'll come back to this in a minute. Yep, obviously got a problem here with this ear. Being wrong size. Well, we're seeing a little bit of this thing I've been noticing lately where usually making fixes like I just did is not as useful as just redrawing the darn thing. So, tis what it is. You can see. We'll just grab this whole zone and erase this stuff. Yeah, as long as it serves as a guide, we're in good shape. We're in good shape, people. Okay. Okay, so now, what I want to do here is, I think, I want to stick a little closer to the plan that I made on paper. So I just got to make sure the proportion, that he doesn't change volume. So we basically got one unit here. That's probably okay. He is kind of leaning into the camera a little bit, so he would get a little bit bigger. Just a little bit. Okay. Yeah, well, actually, it's more like this. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. We'll see how this goes. So, Maria, hey, Maria. Inio-san, hey man. I checked Discord yesterday to see if you had that voice thing ready to go. It looks like you don't yet, so. Not horrible. Of course, we all have a tendency to slant our pencils one way or the other. right? So when you draw an oval, if you're, depending on whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you'll have a tendency to sort of tilt. You know, it'll be a little out of shape, one orientation or the other. Most people are going to have some amount of that. Boom, boom, boom. Not too shabby, not too shabby. Dave and Tom said yesterday that the previous one was hard to read. Oh, yeah. That's easier to read. That is easier to read. Okay, shoot, 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 shoot. Boom, boom, boom. Yep, that's better. Don't know how long I'm going to be working today, by the way, guys. I might be... yeah, I don't know. I'm just leaving it totally open. I did quite a bit of work before I live streamed, so... if I run out of gas, I run out of gas. I'm sure the world will probably keep turning. Okay. Okay, let's see what that feels like. Pretty good, doesn't it? Yep. Well, gee, Asher. Blah, blah. Okay, yeah. See, so he's gonna say, gee, Asher. Probably 5 seconds. I don't know. I'm thinking about 80 or 40 frames. So 16 plus 40 takes us up to 56. So let's see how that feels. Gee, Asher. I mean, sometimes a guy just feels like... Okay. I'm going to leave the... I'm not going to do the lip sync. But what I'm going to do is try to get the attitude in there. I think I'm going to be able to make some duplicates and make it flow nicely. By the way, this guy here needs... Okay, that was the wrong key I just hit. Okay. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and set my start point here so I can just focus on this. Okay. Okay, so right here, I'm going to just add a duplicate, and let's just erase his eyes and give him a blink. Okay. And do we want to let this evolve a bit? I think maybe. And so this needs to be a duplicate as well, which takes us to the usual goofy problem, but I guess we could do it this way. Delete that, and this is the obnoxious part. I really wish this, if there was one thing I could change in Tahoma or Opentoonz, like snap my fingers, it would be that when you create a duplicate drawing, all the rest of the drawings to the next drawing that you put there remain the new drawing. Have any of you ever had a single situation where you actually wanted to create one drawing and then have it disappear? That seems a little wrong-headed to me. But there it is. Okay, so we've got this. So this needs to be removed. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a slight turn. Get that back over there. And then I'm going to do a bigger turn. Like that. Okay, that works. Save my work. Okay, getting into the right mindset and trying to make sure I'm able to take care of my initial bills for 6 months while I work on getting some freelance work. No, it may take longer than that, but based on what Biden just implemented, if my employer says I need to get the shot or I am fired, then I am ready for it. I am not yet prepared. Okay, so I think Amar just said that he's not vaccinated. I think that's what Amar just said. Okay, I wonder about something here. This is okay, but I'm actually thinking, I'm going to turn the onion skins back on here for a minute. So I actually think I don't want that turn in here for this. Now, I probably didn't get it exact, so this might not look right. Sure enough. Murphy's Law of Stupid. Okay. Right, so I'm going to try to massage this back into shape. And so it appears that it's moving a microzillimeter to the right, and Mr. Dyslexia is therefore having to move it back to the left. That's probably okay as a guide. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I like that better. Okay, so he says, okay. Okay, so he says, okay, so here, now the question now becomes, yeah, okay, that answered that. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to another drawing. And, yes, I am not vaccinated. And I'm going to put in 2. Okay. trying hard not to lose my sense of the character through here when I'm doing these scribble tweens. Guess that's what we'll call them. Boom, boom, boom. Alright, flip it. Ah! We're doing okay, actually. After flipping the canvas. Okay. Flip it back. Okay. So, sounds like Amar's leaning more towards losing the job is a better option than taking the shot, since he has things he wants to pursue outside of his current job anyway. So, it's all good. It's all good. Yep, pretty good balance. I'm kind of surprised at myself. I did a little better than I thought I would. I think I'm going to turn this off now, so we can just get a little bit. Okay, so now this is gonna. Okay, let's get the center line. Center line, center line. Okay, there's the choo. Boom. Boom, so that's the little flippy-do of his hair. Little hair that peeks out from behind. Okay, I like it. I like the way things are going here. It's going good. I better save my work. Well, I'm not vaccinated and I'm not taking the shot either. I am too, Maria. I am too. I am fully vaccinated. Now, whether I'll take a booster, that I'm not sure if I'll bother. There is a case to be made for kind of allowing yourself to just get automatic boosters by allowing yourself to be exposed to people who have it once you're fully vaccinated. Once you're fully vaccinated, that actually has merit medically or scientifically from a virology standpoint. The problem is that people who aren't vaccinated are so much more at risk of serious illness or death that but the case was made the other day in the chat that for people who are in high school age, there is a case to be made for I haven't chased this down to find out how correct the information was, but the idea was that the risk of the vaccine for a youngster may be worse, a higher risk than the risk of actually having a bad case. So, and I remember when that came up, my response was that, yeah, I mean, this stuff is not simple. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Not at all. Boom, boom, boom. I'm liking what I'm seeing here, guys. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Feels good. I may be actually becoming an animator. Yep. I forgot about that one. I'm sitting here flipping through these and forgot I got one last drawing here and we gotta finish. But yeah, I mean he's moving pretty well and staying on character. So let's rewind to the beginning and see how this feels. Okay, before I do that, I'm going to. A friend of mine told me once the safe bet is to take as much vitamins as you can and you should be fine. Yeah, I mean vitamin D, pretty important. Mom and Dad is probably about to get it. It's it's somewhat likely, Amar, and that's not good. Oh, you mean you didn't mean get the disease? You mean get the shot? Basically, all I hate to say is from everything I know, um, from everything I've heard and read, combined with Valerie's input, since she is basically somebody who was training in virology, we're bullish on the vaccine. Why are you surprised to hear I took it though? But I understand because you live with other people. But I mean, just Valerie, and we never go anywhere. I mean, our biggest risk is Kyle because he bounces between our house and his mom, But why would you be? Just give me the concise, honest answer. Why would it surprise you that I took it? I'm very curious about that. So I just can't even imagine where that would be coming from. Okay. How do we want to do this? I'm gonna try to do it minimalist and see what happens. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to just try it this way. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm going to make a little move here. Duplicate this. Bigger move. I may find I want to animate the shoulders and stuff. So, okay. I don't know your history or thoughts on vaccines. Well, I explained it a lot the other day. I said that our feeling here is that basically vaccines are obviously a wonderful thing, and our problem with vaccines is not a problem with the mRNA vaccines or the whole issues surrounding COVID vaccines in general. It's very evident from just the obvious data that the vaccine has been extremely effective and helpful for people to keep them from getting severe illness or death. That's very clear. I mean, the statistics in Louisiana, Texas, Florida are undisputable. Everybody who's dying, like literally 100% of the people who are dying right now are the people who are unvaccinated. So that's not even disputable data. That's well established, and there's no case to be made for being safer from that by not being vaccinated. However, having said that, our problem that we have with vaccination has to do with some of the choices that are made for children, where you're vaccinating babies for things like Hep B, which, a baby doesn't have an immune system. A baby needs a couple of years to develop somewhat of an immune system naturally, so that they can get because the whole point of the vaccine is to stimulate an immune response. Think about it. Now, the reason the mRNA vaccines are really cool, I can summarize it this way. When I give you a vaccine, what I have to do is I have to include with the attenuated virus, I also have to include other things like heavy metals, like aluminum or I think nickel. But basically heavy metals that stimulate your immune system. They basically get your system riled up so that it has the immune response. Then your immune system looks at the attenuated virus, and you could think of it this way. It's like taking a mold. They basically take a shape of it, and it logs into your immune system's database. And now, when that virus shows up in your body, your immune system looks at its database, and it recognizes it as an invader and attacks it. And that's why the vaccine causes the immune response that then allows you to fight a disease that otherwise could really harm you. So what the mRNA vaccines do that add to that equation is that the manner in which your immune system creates the antibodies to deal with that virus is that it essentially uses the virus as a template to design a protein that is then used to counteract the virus. Okay, so it essentially manufactures a machine, if you will, because that's really what a protein is. It's actually just a cellular size machine. If you want to know more about that, look up the concept of protein folding. It's very, very interesting stuff. So what the mRNA vaccines do for you is it allows you to not have to stimulate your immune system with heavy metals and other additives, because what it does is that it actually gives you directly the map for the protein that it needs to manufacture. That's what the mRNA does. So it's saving your body 2 steps and going straight to the solution to the problem. So in terms of efficacy and safety, just with no other information available, if you're into virology, you would look at that and you would say, without a doubt, if we have the ability to have mRNA vaccines, they are going to be way safer and less intrusive to the body, and yet more efficacious, because they're cutting right to an exact map of the protein that's needed to combat the virus, as opposed to having to look at the attenuated virus and figure out what the map needs to be. So as I say, essentially what you're doing is you're skipping a couple steps that traditionally have to be taken with regular vaccines in terms of how they work in the body. Okay, so obviously this is the layman's explanation. Okay, but in that sense, oops, that was a boo-boo. In that sense, an mRNA vaccine is, you know, just on the face of it, you would expect it to be extremely effective and extremely safe compared to conventional vaccines. Basically, that's what we've seen. Now, does that mean that people don't have a reaction? No, some people will have a reaction. Why? Well, because you're still invoking an immune response. That's why people, you know, their lymph nodes swell up after they take the shot. It's exactly what you want to have happen. Okay, think about this for a minute. If you take the vaccine and you don't have a reaction, that's not good. What that means is your immune system is not very strong. You don't have an effective immune system. The whole point is to have an immune response that trains your immune system to recognize the virus so that going forward, it knows what to do when the virus shows up. Make sense? That's basically what's going on here. So in that sense, it can truly be said that there is no safer vaccine in the history of the universe, the known universe. There's never been a safer vaccine than, say, Pfizer's mRNA vaccine. Why? Because so many people have taken it. And statistically, the number of adverse effects is very, very low. Now, does that mean we shouldn't look at different population groups, age groups, yada, 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 and be a little bit selective and surgical and judicious about who gets what? Absolutely. That's perfectly fine and completely appropriate. So anyway, okay, so that's what's going on. You should try making webtoons. Well, as I said, AK, no, they're not really preventative treatments. It really is the way I explained to you. What the mRNA vaccine is doing is, instead of stimulating your body with heavy metals and all the rest, and then giving it an attenuated virus, which your body normally with a vaccine, the vaccines you got as a child probably, what your body does is use those attenuated vaccines to figure out what the appropriate proteins are that it needs to manufacture to combat the virus when it shows up. With an mRNA vaccine, you're bypassing that whole process and you're going straight to the code, if you will. You're literally giving your body the code it needs to know how to manufacture the antibodies that will combat the virus. So in that sense, it's efficient, it's cheap. It's not cheap to design because it is new technology, so there's a lot of R&D behind it, but But yeah, I mean, it's for somebody like Valerie who studied virology in college. She looks at the mRNA vaccine. She goes, "My God, it's wonderful. It's absolutely, it's. You know, boy, have we needed this for a long time." And I'm like, "Well, geez, Val, does that mean we should actually be repurposing all of our other vaccines, like smallpox and stuff, as mRNA vaccines?" And basically, the answer was, "Well, you know, it might be nice, but once you deal with all the R&D associated with completely repurposing vaccines that already work pretty well, probably not a lot of point, and not a lot of financial incentive to do it either." So, okay, so let's just pull this back and take a look at what we have. There we go. We got it. Okay, so yeah, what's happening here is there's one other thing I need to tweak. This. When he does this, he's going to say the word hungry. Okay, so what he's saying is, let me look at what the actual dialogue is. Mel's saying, and maybe for those who came late, I'll show you what's going on here in the show. Have I got the preview on? Yes, I do. Okay, so what we do, what I've done is I added the establishing shot. So this is literally the first scene in the show. Okay, so Asher's studying, and Mel says, "You know, there's something I've been wondering. Something I've been wondering about." And Asher says,
I knew this day would come.
So Asher lets out this really laborious sigh, because Asher thinks that Mel's asking about basically where he came from. How did I get here? Why did you raise me? All this sort of thing. And of course, that's a misinterpretation on Asher's part, and that's what part of the fun of this scene is the misunderstanding. Okay, so AK, what I am looking at doing is, the show is, you know, episode 1. Well, actually, both of the first 2 episodes are animated mostly, and so what I'm doing today is I'm going into episode 1 and actually redoing. I rewrote a new scene to open the show up that kind of hits all the notes of what the show's about and the style of it and the characters that they're going to be and blah blah blah. So I thought this was a really kind of a good way to start the show up. Once I get this scene done, which is probably going to be about a 30 seconds to 1 minute scene when it's all said and done, I'm going to take that, add to it the 2.5 minute backstory that sort of gives the audience the backdrop for the whole show. And again, the reason I did this is because by doing it that way, we're giving the people the backstory, but the backstory is being told to you through the main characters in the show. Of course, the main character here is Melchizedek. Okay, and so we're just kind of combining all those things together so that we can establish the backstory in a way that folds Mel and Asher into it. And then what I'm thinking is I want to go ahead and add the voices and music to that whole first segment, which will be between 3 and 4 minutes long, and just release it on YouTube and use that as you know, because that'll get some views. I know that's going to get some views, and then that'll help propel us toward either just getting episode 1 on the street, at which point we'll probably do some kind of crowdfund thing, or I may launch a crowdfund thing after releasing the initial little mini webisode, as you say, say Webtoonz. I'm not really interested in doing Webtoonz per se because it would be fun, because I've where I came from originally was basically comic book type cartoon drawing, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. As you can see from this drawing that I did of Wolverine just today, which was based on a Mike Magnolia drawing, I think. But I kind of stole the design because I was testing some things I was learning about the flow lines that I talked about earlier in the live stream today. So, but yeah, Webtoonz would be fun. I've certainly got enough stories. The one movie I wrote called Cloaking Sector 12 would be a great Webtoon. Would be a really cool. Anyway, let's see here. So, Tom, next is climate change. No, Tom, come on. No, Tom, thank you, Tom, thank you. Yes, the questions about the spike protein, the staying in the body, the long-term effects, yada, yada, yada. But all those questions are valid questions, and they're valid concerns that do speak to a lot of things we could talk about having to do with both the disease and the vaccine. Okay? Having said that, the concerns we have about the spike protein say one thing to me, and that is that back in February of 2020, if we would have had a massive, uncompromising, no holds barred shutdown for 60 days, this vaccine or this virus would have died out. We could have stopped it in its tracks, and we did everything wrong. We couldn't have more spectacularly failed in how everything was handled all through 2020. And now we see a manifestation of that again in Florida, where you've got a guy like DeSantis who's in power, and he's actually going to frame this as being about parents' rights. And it's a what do we want to say? It's not simple, only because this question of vaccinations for teenagers is a valid question that needs to be looked at in terms of whether they're actually at more risk from the vaccine than they are from the disease. That's a fair question. Okay. Other than that little caveat that complicates it in Florida, what we see in Florida is exactly what you would expect. You got a dumbass governor who is using the whole thing to position himself politically for a run for president, and as a result, the virus has gone hog wild in the state. There's a lot of, you could say, well, no, it would have happened anyway, blah, 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 all the reasons. No. What we see is when people don't apply best practices, you get very predictable results, and that's exactly what we've seen in Florida. So, and it's why the red states are getting decimated, because you got all the anti-vaxxers are in the red states, and so the red states are getting decimated with the disease, and the blue states are doing much better. It is what it is. Okay, and I don't think that's really debatable. I mean, the data is pretty clear, especially when it comes to fatalities and whatnot. I mean, any number of doctors will tell you if everybody who's died in the last month has been somebody who wasn't vaccinated. Basically, there might be. You know what? I'm not equipped to discuss that, but it's a fair question. It's a fair question. So yeah, I don't know. You may know more about that than I do. I know Sweden. There's more than one country that's taken different policies from ours who has had results that were, either a little better or a little worse than you would expect under those circumstances. So that I can't speak to. Ain't gonna try. All right, so this looks pretty good. I guess what we'll do here is erase his mouth, because he's going to be winding up having lip sync smacked all throughout. And I think we're in good shape here. I'm going to go ahead and render this and smack it into the show if the timing's right. And Tom, again, of course there are. Like that's a surprise or something. It's not a surprise. My daughter-in-law had a breakthrough case. Even though she was fully vaccinated, she wasn't hospitalized. But yeah, of course there are some. What I've heard from medical people on the ground in Florida, and this was a couple of weeks ago, was that what they're seeing is everybody who dies, 100% unvaccinated. Everybody who's hospitalized, 98% unvaccinated. So it's not 100% of the hospitalizations are unvaxxed people. Only 98%. Okay? That's what they're saying on the ground. Okay. Basically, the prequel, it's 25. I think Amar's talking about something he's working on. 16 issues for free online, my first universe. Yeah, Amar, I look forward to seeing you get that out. That'll be cool. I just have never done the webtoon thing. Hungry. Okay, yeah, that's what I forgot. I knew there was something I was forgetting. Okay, right there, I want to do a shrug. So I'm going to go D, D, and then this should actually be 12. And what we're going to do is we probably should just redraw it, but I guess for just this one time, I'm going to go ahead and hit the shift key and go up a little bit. Okay. Yeah, at the end of the day, everybody's going to do what they do, and our attitude is we basically don't go anywhere anyway. You know, we're just, you know, we've got our happy little quiet life that we lead, and we don't really get out other than just going to the grocery store. So, and that's really important for us because of Valerie's condition. You know, when she gets a cold, it hurts her a lot more than it hurts you. I will guarantee you, whoever you are, anybody in my audience, I will guarantee you, when Valerie gets a cold, it's much more egregious to her system. So we're pretty careful about keeping her from being exposed to too much stupid stuff. Because we love her, that's why. Oops, I just hit the wrong key. So. Yeah, I don't go anywhere. If I had a home like you, I'd probably have a farm. Yeah, if we wind up, you know, what we really want to do is actually move to Hawaii. Not because, and maybe not for the reasons one might expect. I mean, our perfect situation would be 1 acre on the Big Island in Hilo, where we would grow our own food. We wouldn't live off grid, but we'd be close. You know, we'd be catching our own water, which a lot of people on the Big Island do. It's not unusual. Being completely off grid is fairly unusual, but we would need about another $100,000 liquid to pull it off, because unfortunately the home values in that area. So the reason to do it is actually because of Val's condition. She does really, really well in the summer compared to the winter, and so going somewhere that's equatorial, that would be consistent weather year-round, would be quite beneficial for her. So, personally, I couldn't care less. I mean, I've never been to Hawaii. She has. Apparently, it's pretty nice. But to me, I'm like, I'm happy where we are, you know. But I can totally see why she would like to live somewhere where the weather is really predictable. You know, rains every day at the same time for about the same length of time. You know, it's like, you know, that equator thing. So, but as I say, in order to swing it, like if we really, really, really wanted to swing it, we could probably pull it off. But I don't really want to have to get a mortgage, you know. I don't really want to have a mortgage. I don't like mortgages. You know, paying nothing but interest for years on end. I've had them several times. You know, natural disasters. Actually, it's even worse than that. Virgin Islands are okay. Virgin Islands are okay. What is the one that starts with a C? She's actually got an aunt that lives on. Darn it. It's on the Atlantic side. I forget the name of the. Starts with a C. It's just having a brain fart. No, I'm happy with the animation here. I'm definitely getting the types of results I'm wanting, that I think are, as I said the other day when I stated my mission. My mission is to engage in the disciplined engineering of competitive quality media properties. That's what I'm trying to do. I really do. I really want to compete. I want to put this show out there and actually have it sit in the mix reasonably well against other shows that are out there, and I think I can do it. I think I am doing it. Very slowly, with much improvement still needed along the way, but we're getting there. What do we see? So yeah, the thing about yeah, it's in the Caribbean, but I can't remember the name of the island. Darn it. It's actually, I'm sorry, it's a British, it's part of the British Empire, not, it's not an American territory. Um, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I've said it a million times, but for some reason I'm having a brain fart. You know, it comes with age. So anyway, there was a home. There's a home in Hilo that looked interesting, that was surprisingly cheap. Well, what we found out was that there had been a lava flow in 2018, and this home was right in the path of that lava flow. Now you look at that and you go, wow, there's insurers who will insure a home in the lava zone. And the chances of the same lava flow, because obviously it builds up when it flows, so the chances of the same place getting turned to ash in one lifetime is actually pretty low. So if you're willing to live in the lava flow zone, the home prices are a little more reasonable, and you're just taking a risk. And then you want to look into you got to look at the property insurance situation. But no, I talked to a guy there who told me that there are insurers that will insure homes that are in the lava zone. It's a little spendier than homeowners insurance typically, but not that bad. That was kind of the way we left it. I didn't even look into what it would actually cost, because we're not that serious about doing it at this point. It's just like, that's what if I did that, I'd keep doing everything I'm doing now. I'd just be sitting and making cartoons and taking care of my current customers. Cayman Islands, yes, thank you. Yep, Cayman Island. That's where it is. Thank you, Tom. Cayman Islands. Yeah, and the Cayman Islands, there's no COVID in the Cayman Islands. There's no COVID. Now, Tom maybe is going to weigh in and say, oh, there's been one case. I don't know. But from what I understand, they are being, like, you don't go to the Cayman Islands without, when you're there, you're immediately quarantined for at least 2 weeks, if not a month. They're not dicking around with it at all. And that's what I heard about the Cayman Islands. And the Cayman Islands would be good, but the Cayman Islands are going to be way more vulnerable to weather anomalies than Hawaii will be, as far as I can tell. So, the thing I like about the Big Island is the idea that I could actually, I could live somewhere that's 75 degrees year round, but I could drive for an hour and go snowboarding. Because you just go up the volcano and, there's really nice snow up there. So that would be cool. I would enjoy being able to go snowboarding. Because I like snowboarding, it's fun. Okay, so Mel's collar kind of evolved. So we'll have to address that. I think we can handle addressing that at the ink and paint stage. Question now becomes, are we going to deal with... Question actually now becomes, am I going to keep going or am I going to wrap it up? And I'm thinking I'm probably going to wrap it up. And... all that vitamin D because of the sun, you mean? Yeah, I mean, Val's out in the sun right now. Anytime we can get good sunshine, that definitely helps her to feel better. Okay, so I guess it wouldn't be harmful to do the lip sync, only because it's pretty quick to do anyway. So let's do this. Let's erase. Let's do some judicious erasing, and we'll actually do the final the real lip sync that'll lay over top of the ink and paint. Cool. Cool. So, do we want to do it as a vector level? I think not. I think we will just go B key and do it this way. Whoops. We want to be... Actually, let's do freehand areas so we can do it like that. That's cool. Okay, and I'm gonna stick to my recent algorithm, which is anime style. Anime style lip sync. So now here, that can be, let's see, we're gonna have a transitional, so let's go like this. And then we're gonna have to, unfortunately, add different shapes because his head is moving. Okay, B key. That might be a little winky looking. No, it's probably okay. Control C, Control V. Then this would be probably almost closed. And then we're going to have another switch. I like the idea of this actually being almost in the same position. Okay, and yes, this is where he actually lets loose with a fair amount of dialogue. So, I'm going to get these shapes in here, and then I may find out that that I've got the lip sync in the wrong place. But it doesn't matter. If I get the shapes in there that I need, I know I can always rearrange them. So, F key. Boom. Control V. And this would be the almost closed shape. My microphone thing keeps banging on the table here when I lean over. So we're going to add another instance of all of this, and then probably find out right here that it falls apart because he turns his head. B key. Alright, now we better check this. I'm going to take this one, move it a little further south there, people. That's better. Okay. And now, he's going to say, hungry. B, I better turn my guides back on. F key. B key. F key. And then this, I'm going to let the mouse sneak down a little bit. Too much. S key. Pull that back up. Okay. Rewind. Okay. What about Arizona, Nevada, warm states, dry states? You know, Val and I haven't talked extensively about that. I mean, I personally don't like Arizona at all. That's just me. Been there a few times, did some work in Scottsdale. It's just not my cup of tea. And they still have seasons, you know, so a lot of people go to Arizona, though, to get away from the cold. That's for sure. I don't know. I think she's pretty sure that the big island of Hawaii would be her ideal place to live. I like it, guys. I like it. So let me look at what he says. He says, well, you know. Okay. So, click, click. Well, you know. sometimes a guy just gets hungry. And then Asher jumps in. Yes, Melchizedek, I understand. Okay, so the timing of this is not quite right, and he's got too much lip sync up here at the top. But we can certainly render it and pop it into the show. So Control-Shift-R. Do I have this in the show yet? Let me jump over here and see. I just don't remember. I do not. So let's grab this. Project Media. So we're going to stick this in, see how it feels, and then I think we'll quit for now. I'm about tapped, I think. Ready for a nice cold one. And are we at... I have to look over here at Tahoma and see if we're at... Yeah, we're at 8 frames a second. So that's really good because that means we can always pump it up a bit if we want to. So G key, boom, properties. Let's turn off the resampling, and I'll just let it flow through and see how it's feeling. Bum 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 ba doo ba doo ba doo.
I knew this day would come.
Well, Asher, I mean, sometimes a guy just feels, hungry. Yeah. Okay. So it's a little bit of a forced bit of humor since Asher's assuming when he says hungry that he's talking about an inner angst to know his story, when in fact he's actually talking about being hungry. So it's a little silly, but I feel good about it. I think we're doing good here, doing well. File, save all, and I think that's it for me. 152, we've almost gotten to the 2-hour point, so if there's anything extremely controversial that someone wants to talk about for 7 minutes, now's the time to speak up. And I will rant and rave. And Maria votes a resounding no, Dave. No. We don't want to do that. All right. So we won't do that. All right, you guys. It's been fun. Thanks for hanging out. As you guys know,